Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 13. Welcome to Branding Like a Boss, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the cannabis industry's most influential brands and the talented minds behind them. I'm your host, Angela Pih, and today I'm really excited to be joined by Sveta Doucet, Chief Marketing Officer at 1906, a wellness brand that's killing it across dispensaries and e-commerce. Sveta brings an illustrious career from luxury lifestyle brands like Tiffany, LVMH, Chanel, Grey Goose, and Diageo. She's one of the most strategic and savvy marketers whom we've known for more than 10 years in our industry, and so lucky to benefit from her expertise. Today's we'll hear about what she did to make the leap into the cannabis industry, and then also what inspires her and what's next for 1906 brand. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a marketing professional, or simply a fascinated person within the industry who's learning to up their game, you're in for a real treat. So let's dive right in. Hi, Sveta, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you. Wow, you're dialing in from New York, right?
I am. So nice to see you.
So let's just dive right in and just share your journey and what led you to the industry. Let's kick it off. 1906 is such a distinctive and evocative name. So can you share a little bit? Well, maybe let's just take a step back. How did you actually get into cannabis? Because
Well, on a
you have this amazing career that and so impressive. You can do anything you want. So why choose cannabis?
why not? Right. On a personal note, I love cannabis. But I want to almost separate almost like my personal relationship with the plant and think about it more as like an industry, just as we would think about any other like CPG brand. But let me take a step back. Um, I came into 1906 really as, a brand builder and a marketer that had covered all sorts of lifestyle spaces, whether it's been beauty or fashion or spirits, et cetera. And I sort of like think of cannabis as just another lifestyle tool that is very similar to those other spaces. But the way I personally got into brand building and marketing was not linear at all. I actually started my career very oddly, actually in politics in Washington, D.C. I was a researcher for a nonpartisan think tank called New America Foundation. And it was there that I sort of became really obsessed with systems and narratives and how public sentiment is shaped. And so, actually, in hindsight, that was probably like my earliest training in sort of brand strategy. Sorry. Um, but my upbringing was really that I had lived in 7 different countries before I turned 18, and that sort of upbringing really gives you a deep sensitivity to culture, like how people behave, what they value, and it really taught me how to like closely listen. So I think both of these things made me really obsessed with the consumer or the idea of consumers, right? Like people who hold massive amounts of purchasing power and can sort of like shape and inform the world through those decisions. So I really have spent my career in helping brands meet people where they're at emotionally and culturally. And so why cannabis, it just seems like a really natural place to step into because it's not only complex because of the legal ramifications and legal issues around cannabis, but it's emotionally complex and it's also really culturally loaded. So that's why I sort of stepped into it, as it was sort of a category that could use a bit of that reframing, and a category that could use that sort of brand discipline and rigor and that strategic rigor that I haven't necessarily seen in this space. And that was simply like a challenge I couldn't walk away from.
Yeah, and I think we're so lucky to have you in the industry. You and I work together, boy,
A
A
long
long
time
time
ago.
ago. A long time ago. You know, we've known each other for more than a decade, when we're both in fashion and beauty. And um, a lot of people have said that those of us who come from outside within the industry that brings the wealth of network, strategic thinking, and discipline to it have a hard time kind of like fitting in because
Hmm.
we operate at a certain level. And sometimes it's a little risky for marketers like us or strategic thinkers like us to go into cannabis because it's still not federally legal. So
Mhm.
it's so inspiring to hear the regulatory side in terms of looking at the regulatory environment, but then tying it to consumer behavior and consumer perception, and bringing it within a framework of what can we do as marketers to be able to change and reframe the
Hmm.
industry and the plant.
Well, I think, I don't know if I would be a natural fit for any cannabis brand. I would say I'm a very good fit for 1906, primarily because the vision and the ambition of 1906 is very aligned to not only what I personally think about cannabis, but very aligned to the role cannabis can play in people's lives. And traditionally, cannabis it's been very insular. It's been very
Mhm.
specialist. It's been very elitist, which seems odd to use that word in this space, but it has. And when I met the founders of 1906 and listened and heard about their vision about opening up cannabis accessibility and making it almost like democratizing the cannabis experience for all, that for me was very classic CPG type of marketing, right? Like, how do you take something that can naturally integrate into people's lives and make it really meaningful? I don't know if I'd be a natural fit to step into a place which was, we're only speaking to a small subset of flower enthusiasts who only will smoke from a plant that's been cultivated in a very, very particular way. And the same reason that I have never been a marketer in something very niche like wine marketing. What
Yep.
I like to do is big impact and really be in people's lives and be part of the everyday. And that's how I think we shape shift culture.
Oh, and we're seeing that. I mean, I'm seeing that as I've been watching your brand. But let's start with the name. What does
Sure.
1906 represent?
1906, it's really simple, really, is that the name 1906 marks the year that the Wiley Act was passed, which is when Prohibition started. So the vision and mission behind 1906 is really to open up cannabis accessibility for all and return the plant back to its pre-prohibition status. So it's a reminder of not only where we've been and the sort of racist war on drugs, but
Mhm.
really where we can go. And the mission really here is to end prohibition, not just legally, but actually culturally. And that really means that we're giving people better products, better language, and better outcomes.
Mhm.
So we've reclaimed it by naming it 1906.
Well, there's also a very intentional approach to your brand design in
Yes.
terms of how the product looks, how the product messages, how the brand messages that, um, from a category standpoint, like you were saying, it's very CPG. So, um, what does that intention look like? What's that intentionality? Like, I have an inkling, but would
Mhm.
love to hear it from you.
Well, it's interesting when we think about the plant itself, right? It's such a wild and wondrous plant and it can do so much. And there's a lot of um mystery around the plant. There's a lot of unknown around the plant. And I think because of the psychoactive component of cannabis, there's a world that you can imagine cannabis living in. And that's, old cannabis. At the same time, there is a precision that is that can be extracted from the plant,
Mm-hmm.
and a simplicity around it. So what we attempt to do, and I think we do it very successfully and better than most at 1906, is really, again, if we're going back to our mission about accessibility, we really harness the best of the plant and we align it to very clear human need states, whether that's um, you know m- helping, with better sleep, which is why many people come to cannabis, or for
Yep.
less anxiety, but even to the extremes where people don't think that cannabis has a rightful place, like in performance through our Go product, or through Genius through our Focus product. So what we've really tried to do is demystify, clarify, and give people a very clear path to purchase, through an invitation of coming in through all of these different need states. And so, all the way from our naming system to our packaging design system to even what we talk about through our, precision formulations, that's we're very front footed on it, and we're very clear about it. We don't want to leave mystery on the table. And our job, we know we've done our job when we've answered all of the consumers' sort of obstacles or any of their sort of questions in a very direct, transparent way. And it's not necessarily an industry that has been built on transparency.
I think you're right. And when you're talking about the audience, who do you see the brand being designed for?
It's interesting, is I would say it's for everyone and anyone. It's my mother now actually uses 1906, all the way to my father, who has, unfortunately, has Alzheimer's. But I think, when we think about the customer, we think about it really as it's built for a modern, intentional consumer. People who want to feel something, they want to feel calm, they want to feel connected, they want to feel clear. It is not for people who just want to feel nothing or feel high.
Yep.
So when we think of these consumers, they can be parents or caregivers or creatives. These are people who are wellness minded but skeptical of wellness fluff. So we like to think that we're designed for the why and not the high alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say our consumer is not a one size fits all. It's very need based. Um, but you'd never catch me putting on a brief that we are for, a Gen Z customer alone. Our job is incomplete if we are not capturing, you know, both ends of the customer's spectrum. So we're very psychographically led instead of being, just by defining it demographically.
Yeah, I'm certain because everything that you've done is, in the time that we've known each other, just across so many different categories, is that you have it so well thought through from a strategic standpoint. And then how does it actually manifest and execute? Because you have to start from the beginning. We always start from why are we doing this? Who are we designing for? How are we going to reach them? And what do we want to shape in terms of that changed behavior or changed perception? So, from the outside, when we look at 1906, it looks like it's more of a brand that's creating or increasing a total addressable market. It's
Mhm.
actually building TAM. It's bringing people who are not necessarily considering cannabis to actually integrate cannabis into their everyday lifestyle, into routines, versus perhaps converting an existing cannabis customer into a new form factor or into your brand. Um, in your design, in the brand design, what are the considerations around that?
I think it's both, right? Because, I think our form factor, and we have multiple form factors now in the business. Our job is really, again, if it's about accessibility, we wanted to create a product where the most seasoned cannabis user still had a reason to come to 1906. So what's beautiful about flower is you can harness the plant and you can cultivate the plant with a very specific outcome. But the plant is not, smoking is not appropriate in every single environment, right? You
That's
can't
right.
smoke at work potentially, or you might not want that in your house or at a concert. So we offer that alternative for people who potentially want to extend the life of flower or extend
Right.
the high there. So we provide that utility. At the same time, we want to give people alternatives to either big pharma solutions, such as taking anti-anxiety medication or being overly reliant on big pharma for things like focus or for sleep. So we invite people in through need states and get them to reappraise their current situation. So let's use big alcohol as a good example. People utilize alcohol to socialize. It's very interesting that cannabis is so um, prohibited in so many different places, and big alcohol has won out. But we're seeing clearly the pendulum swinging, driven by like
Absolutely.
consumers'
We're
tastes,
making
right?
little,
Like
we're nibbling away at it.
nibbling at away. And I think, cannabis is going to start to take even bigger swings. But we're giving people alternatives to things that they're already doing, whether it's taking melatonin, which is great, horrible for like for hormone disruption,
I was about
etc.
to say that, it's
Yeah,
been so widely used, but then people don't really understand, the hormonal impact in terms of the balance and imbalance.
absolutely. Or people who've even been reliant upon, painkillers or opioids as a way to manage pain.
Pain.
Cannabis can solve a lot of these issues when harnessed correctly and done correctly. I would be, remiss to not mention that, 1906 isn't just cannabis, right? It's about cannabis in tandem with other plant medicines that work well to deliver a very specific outcome.
Yeah.
So,
Other functional adaptogens for sure.
and I would say, look, there's always going to be the skeptic out there who's always going to want to smoke flower and never wants to consume cannabis in any other way. I would still encourage people to try 1906 in not necessarily as an alternative, but rather as a companion to that experience. And then there are some people who are very nervous to come into cannabis, because the industry and the tradition of cannabis has been, it can be a scary proposition, right? It is a psychoactive. And so we want to invite people in a way that's controllable and repeatable and predictable. And I think that's just that language itself is not language that was typically used in the cannabis space. You wouldn't think that we're building a brand for control freaks, and there are a lot more control freaks out there than you might imagine.
Me for one.
Me for one, for sure. Um, but I think that's what makes 1906 so special. It's like we're utilizing language that consumers use themselves, but don't necessarily connect to the experience of cannabis.
I completely agree. When we walk into a dispensary, it can be a really intimidating experience for a lot of people. You're standing in front of a bud tender. You don't want to sound like you don't know anything. But what you know is that you have a few challenges or some ailments that you want to manage. You feel anxious, you can't sleep, you've got some acute pain, but you don't know what's being recommended to you if you're a bit of a, newbie or someone who's not really into strains and not really into flower. And you're just looking for some sort of relief. And,
Yeah.
when I see your brand at the store level, you have a very distinct visual and retail merchandising architecture in terms of the way you explain things, assisted or unassisted by a bud tender.
Well, you know, i- the dispensary environment for us is, an environment. We grew up in the dispensary environment, and we still
Yep.
love the dispensary environment, and we love our bud tenders, and we celebrate our bud tenders because they are really the mouthpiece for 1906. So the power of the bud tender, we're very clear on the power of the bud tender to shape consumer perceptions and also to educate about the brand.
Mm-hmm.
When we first entered dispensary, we were very disruptive, right? We were color forward, we were clear, we stripped away the lore of cannabis, whether it was through strains or terpenes or all the a language system that's been developed by bud tenders themselves. One of the challenges that we have faced is really that bud tenders are experts themselves, but they're also consumers of cannabis. So
Sure.
there's education that needs to be done with bud tenders as well, which is, it's a little bit of a hierarchy. Like first you love flower, and then maybe you can then come tinctures, and then come edibles, and then then come different types of edible formats. And I think we've done a great job of explaining like the intentionality of our delivery system, our format, et cetera, to bud tenders. But what we had to do it from a visual merchandising place is not just be reliant on bud tenders to communicate. Our visual merchandising needs to
Yeah.
invite people in, and not do it through price, and not do it just through milligrams. Because if you're a new customer coming in, that value equation isn't something you might necessarily be thinking about. You might be coming in through sleep, or I just want to have fun, or I've never done this before. I liken it to interacting with a sommelier, or going into a wine store with experts,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to have that conversation. So we're a brand who wants to have the conversation with a customer that feels very accessible, really, really transparent, and we want the visual merchandising to do that heavy lifting. And we don't think we need to shout and over-educate. We want to give just enough for people to feel confident in the choices that they make.
Yeah, it's very visible. Like when I go to, stores in New York. So you're available at the dispensary level in New York, New Jersey, right?
New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois. We're in quite a few states.
Okay, because I
Yes.
thought it was only one or two states, but it's actually much more than that.
Yeah, we are where consumers love us, and
Love it.
where as a business, where we can also have really responsible, sustainable growth. We don't want to just be in all places, and for us, it's not just about having a footprint everywhere. It's having a tangible footprint, and being able to be on the ground and lead educations, and have pop-ups, and really sort of be the hand holder, as much as possible. And then, as in the dispensary side, there's very little control brands really have at the
I
dispensary
was about to
level.
get there.
Yeah, it's this is like a therapy session, Angela. This is like into right.
I
There's
feel your pain.
Yeah. I mean, look, at dispensaries there's some dispensaries who do it exceptionally well, that really curate a beautiful experience, whether it's through a lifestyle type of experience, like like Gotham, or
Hmm.
something that's really curated and clean, almost like an Apple store, like at the
Or
travel
like travel
agency.
agency. Yeah.
They both do beautiful, beautiful jobs. And and a lot of dispensaries are craving brands to come in and sort of help
Create experiences.
create experiences. And we like to think, our role is not just about creating experience, but sort of like raising the bar on what retail merchandising should look like for the customer.
Well,
And
it's great
it's
that
kind of a fun
you're
experience.
speaking to that, because I was going to leave it for later on
Yeah.
in the episode. So we're talking about retail merchandising, uh, different retailers. So let's dive into that in terms of retail partnerships.
Yeah.
It's so varied in terms of the retail partnerships, from the independent mom and pop to the multi-store experience, and also what you're trying to create in terms of consistency across from market to market. So what does like an ideal retail partner look like
Mm,
for 1906?
it's a great question. Um, The ideal partner for us is someone who is truly invested in quality, not just volume. And listen, the volume part is incredibly important. So I'm not totally deprioritizing that. But the best partners and the best retail partners sees us as almost the category builder, and not just a vendor that they're putting on the the shelf.
Yeah,
So there are certain dispensaries, right, that are out there who are really great at training their teams, supporting in-store storytelling, and treat the whole retail experience really like as a brand building moment. And for us, when that alignment is there, it's absolutely magic. So whether that's a holiday pop-up that we're doing with a gift wrap station, with one of our retailers that feels like something you would do at a Sephora, for example, that's like where
yeah,
that magic comes in for us. And so we invest a lot of time and energy into we call it partnerships, right?
of
Into our
course.
retail partnerships, because it's not just about, signing a PO and getting product onto shelf, because we don't think the product is going to um, do as well. Like, I mean, we're just as invested in helping retailers move the product,
Yeah,
and just relying on them to do so.
I'm seeing retailers get more interested in that, especially in New York, where
Mm,
they want more full 360 retail partnerships that are, bud tender education, retail merchandising, experiences, sell through ideas that actually support driving traffic to the store and actually looking at conversion data that the brand's instigating. And there's more of those types of requests now.
I think we are starting to see our retail partners think more like retail marketers,
Mhm.
and understanding their own retail environment, not as a collection of brands, but the dispensary as a destination and a standard for the type of customer service you're going to get, the type of education you're going to get, etc. And so it, I use the Sephora language only because, I've worked on Sephora, in my previous life, but education is really the key and like the unlock. And what we know at 1906 is that it's not just about educating the bud tender just enough to educate the consumer. It's educating the bud tender almost as a separate audience. Like, we treat our bud tender as a separate, almost consumer audience,
Yep,
right? Because they are very versed in this space and they see a lot of brands, and they help us sort of poke holes in our story. We
that's
want
right,
that. We
because
want the feedback. Yes. I'm sorry,
yeah,
Angela, you
because
were
if they're
saying.
not, no, because it's to that point, if they don't feel aligned and convinced by what the brand stands for, the product quality, and whether it actually delivers on what it promises, it's going to be really hard for them to stand there and actually advocate for the brand and the products.
Absolutely. And it's personal for them too. When you look at bud tenders who come into the space, so many of them have such amazing personal stories, and they love the plant, even more than consumers love the plant. So, our first job is to build brand love, as we call it, with our bud tenders. Um, Almost see them as our partners in education. Where can we strengthen the story, or where can we strengthen the product? And give bud tenders the opportunity to try the product as well. And so we drive
Hmm.
trial amongst our bud tenders before we even put it on shelf. They are our first influencers.
Oh, completely. Well, if we look at the bud tenders, the dispensary, where you only have certain amount of control in that environment for the consumer experience, the outcome, the sell through, and we pivot to e-commerce, where 1906 has been really successful in terms of
Mhm.
your instigating of its innovation of its e-commerce set of products. where you do have 100% control on the shopping experience. How did you design for that that's different from the dispensary experience with the full control that you have?
Well, I see actually more similarities than differences between the retail and the e-com space. Obviously, the e-com space gives us better access to data, more one-to-one communication with our customer. We're almost closer to the customer on the e-commerce side, but
Yep.
in terms of from a brand level, it starts with it starts from the same place that 1906 helps people feel better faster, and that message is really consistent. But the tactics that we deploy in the regulated market, which is, right, as you know, super
Yep.
compliance heavy and hyper local, is really different than the e-commerce side. So I would say, like, on the dispensary or the compliance heavy side, we focus on hyper local activations. We focus on staff training, in-store storytelling, and really strong partner relationships. And then on the e-commerce side, which gives us complete access, direct access to consumers, while we do lean into education and depth of education, because we can actually go deeper, we can reward the customer for as deep as they want to go. Like, the more they click, the more we can reward them. But that's really about leaning into CRM and performance marketing,
Yep.
et cetera, to almost like tweak and fine tune on by the minute as to how we interact with that consumer. But our growth paths are totally different because they're completely different environments, as you can imagine. So, like, the growth paths between both channels couldn't be um, more wildly different. So my job is about keeping the brand consistent, but allowing each sector to grow sustainably.
Yeah, a lot of brands are navigating that. How do you be one brand consistent across both channels? I mean, you've got regulated dispensary, then you have the hemp derived for e-commerce, and at the same time, also navigating potentially hemp derived wholesale.
Hmm.
If you were going to be available in, certain storefronts that are not dispensaries but offering the hemp products, um, making sure that there is that level of consistency as we hopefully get towards, rescheduling and descheduling. It's just one brand.
And what's interesting is that when we initially launched in e-commerce, you know, and as cannabis brands were moving into, let's say, into hemp derived, there was a lot of sort of, I guess, fear about cannibalization.
Hmm.
Right? Like, and does that mean people aren't going to walk into the dispensary? And we were very conscious of that because first off, we love our dispensary customers. We built like a decade of relationships with bud tenders, and we have our loyal customer base there. But if you come back to what 1906 is about, which is about accessibility, by empowering and giving consumers the option and the control to invite cannabis storytelling, the cannabis experience into their own homes on their own terms, we almost prime the consumer now to embolden them to step into a dispensary. So we almost see it as like this beautiful relationship with both sides of the business. They grow differently.
Hmm.
Each channel requires different muscles, but they both feed into the same brand. So we're very consistent about what we say, but we're very aware that the dispensary customer might be more cannabis fluent. So we can use, let's say, slightly more um, insidery language in dispensary. Not that we
Dispensaries,
do
yeah.
that. Yep. And then on the hemp side is where we can be more educational and even clearer. So you know, so for example, fast acting is very core to what we do. And we're seeing it across, we're seeing it emerge in several brands. And if you're a dispensary customer, you have seen the idea of fast acting, because you see the packaging in store and you see the evolution there. And bud tenders can talk about that there. For example, on the D2C side, we'll spend time care around explaining why it's fast acting and the liposomal technology and how it works, bypassing the liver, et cetera. So education looks different in both places as well.
Oh, for sure. When I was on Papa and Barkley, and we have the e-commerce aspect of the business and also the dispensary business, I was thinking more about, being channel agnostic, creating products that are, about accessibility. So it's almost like it's the same brand. It's the product form factors are exactly the same across both e-commerce and dispensary. Dosing, potency, and onset are also consistent across both. And if we look at it from being channel agnostic to basically create frictionless as much as possible for that shopping experience, how we create frictionless and taking that out of the equation, whether you're going into a store or you're shopping online, as a team, we're really, we work really hard to design for that, because I think a lot of brands don't necessarily think about it that way. They think, oh, an e-commerce consumer is going to bring their e-commerce shopping habits to that type of environment versus I'm walking into a dispensary, so I'm going to like pivot my brain in shopping differently. And I don't think that's true. I think as consumers, we shop the way we shop, and we have those expectations going into, oh, I'm shopping for cannabis, so I have a different set of expectations. What's been what have been your insights into that?
It's interesting. Like, we talk about the dispensary customer and the D2C customer, but the reality is the D2C customer can also be the dispensary customer, and vice
That's right.
versa. So we actually start with something deadly simple, which is, what is the category we're in? And we are in the category not of cannabis, but of functional cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Speed and specificity change everything for us. We're very clear on what we're pushing against, which is like unpredictable, slow, overpowered experiences. And we design for utility. So it's very consistent from the product format to the visual identity to the brand voice itself, is about making functional cannabis feel intuitive and empowering. So it's the same brand, it's the same product format, it is the same offering. Now, we offer where we flex because of regulations, again, and compliances, we can offer a higher dosage offering in dispensary when we want that. We want to give a reason for people to come into dispensary. Whereas we focus on the microdose
Mm-hmm.
component of our offering in D2C, but that very much again leans into hemp compliance, right? So
Of course.
we really sort of anchor in that microdose experience online, but it's still very much designed with utility, precision at its core, absolute
That
clarity
makes
across the
that makes
board.
so much sense, because we've seen such a proliferation of overdosed high potency products on the e-commerce side that for consumers who are not anticipating that level of impact could have a really horrible adverse effect.
Well, we like to dose with purpose. So we have, it's everything we do is intentional. So, there's a reason why even at dispensary, our Genius product is, from a milligram perspective, isn't as high as some of our others, because we found that the perfect place to be from the interaction of the plant medicines to the THC needs to be at a level where people can still perform, right? We don't want
Yes.
to take people out of the game. Our goal is to put people into
Completely
the game.
faded out.
Yeah, exactly. So when we launched our pain and relief product in dispensary and in in direct to consumer, we didn't do it as a microdose because we dosed it at the appropriate and effective levels to help help people manage pain. And so we weren't beholden to saying, oh, we can only be microdose. Our goal is to deliver effective functional cannabis products. And so we have a 10 milligram offering on D2C, um, but there's a reason for it, right? Like we're
Yeah, I've
very,
seen
very
like
purposeful.
800 milligrams on D2C with other products, which kind of incredibly shocking because I would be hibernating by then.
But I mean, I think they're using the same playbook that, the sort of traditional cannabis playbook, which of like how much THC can you give at the lowest price available?
Hmm. But that's not the
And
game that you're playing because your playbook is different, your approach is different.
our playbook well, we're not going to win at that game, and no one is going to win at that game because then that game is a commodity game,
Yep.
and we are we're in the branding and product game. And so in order to win and continue to win, we have to meet people. This comes full circle back to where customers are. We need to
Yeah.
meet people, and a large group of people exactly where they are. And we don't think we're going to open up accessibility and sort of um, get people to reappraise their relationship with cannabis if we're saying it's only for people who need to get super duper high.
Well,
That's
this
limiting
segues
in and of itself.
absolutely, and this segues really well into innovation.
Yeah,
You've been driving innovation for the brand. We've seen the products at the moment across both D2C and in dispensaries. And you're also creating new products, right?
we are. We are creating new products. Um, Innovation is at the core of what 1906 is built on, and the core of who we are. And when our founders built in 1906, yes, they could have come out with another gummy or done a drink or another sort of form factor, but we were very intentional around how do you take sort of the best of pharma when you think about the pharmaceutical landscape? How do you take the best of pharma tech and apply it to the world of plants to create something that is really disruptive? And that is what 1906 is. And so we did it. We created a drop,
Hmm.
a swallowable pill, which makes it easy to consume. People are used to swallowing pills.
Yep.
It's sugar-free, vegan, all of the things that people sort of look for. So that was the first round of innovation, which was how do we give people an easier way to participate in cannabis that feels um, repeatable and
Hmm.
controllable and removes that sort of like guesswork. Like our goal is to
It's
remove
true
that guesswork.
because, one strain of flower grown differently will give you a completely different effect, same strain.
I mean, if I used my first cannabis experience, that I had as a teenager, I probably would not be in the cannabis industry whatsoever. It was awful because I didn't necessarily it was too much, right? And I didn't know how to control it, and I didn't know anything about that space. And of course, I came back to cannabis many, many
Yeah.
times thereafter, and I learned a little bit more. But back to your question around innovation, our path to innovation has been very much, at the onset was around how do we take all the different human needs and how do we deliver a functional cannabis experience to drive those outcomes, whether it's like sleep, anxiety, focus, working out, libido, as an example. So that
Mm.
was really like the need states was our sort of like first path to innovation. We take a lot of time to develop our products. We test our products. We formulate it with function, solely with function, really in mind. And then our last big, not last, but our next innovation, which has been big news for us and has done incredibly well is we launched a pain relief formulation, and we decidedly did it in a gummy format. Again, intentionality at the core. Sure, could we have done it in a pill format? I guess. But the reason we didn't do it in a pill format, even the drop is so core to what we do, is twofold. One, people who have serious pain and who have struggled with pain management have potentially struggled with opioids. So we didn't
Mm,
necessarily want to draw on a format cue that people have had challenges with in the past. And a gummy format was just a far more accessible way for people to be able to have pain relief. But with that, we needed it to be fast acting. So what we saw with gummies is people take it, it's a little unreliable. You don't know when it's going to hit you. And when you have pain, you need it to work and you need it to work now.
quick, quickly, yes.
Quickly. And then also the way we also innovated is, and these are from my days of I worked on Motrin for a while in the past, is, you know, pain also presents itself very differently during daytime and during nighttime.
Absolutely.
The right? The way your body experiences it, the way your brain processes it. So we went a level further and just said, not all pain is created equal. And let's give you something that is actually going to help you manage your pain at night and help you also function during the day, but also manage your pain during the day. So all of this is formulated with not just THC, but a combination of cannabinoids that can help reduce inflammation over time. But
Yeah.
also, we integrated boswellia into it, which there aren't any pain sort of offerings, I should say, that I know work with the body to heal itself over time. So that was important to us that it wasn't
To
just
be
sort of like a,
supportive. Yeah.
to be supportive over the long term. Correct.
Oh, that's so
Um,
funny because I worked on Tylenol in the early days as well. So again, how different molecules work with pain and how not all pain is the same, and how even how we inflammation ties into that, which I think Motrin works better than Tylenol, but as a different class of painkiller. Well, in terms of product roadmap, are there products that you can speak to as a this is what we're working on in terms of different form factors that we can look out for?
Yeah, well, I'll share a product that we launched at in Q1 of this past year. That's been doing really well for the brand, and I'll share some of the insights that we've learned about it, which is going to inform the rest of our product roadmap. So when we started to look at um, cannabis formats, cannabis consumption culture, we would be blind if we didn't look to the drink category. And what we were seeing in the drink category is the rapid expansion of um, innovation coming through flavor. So prescribed flavors, forced flavor profiles. Again, sort of telling people that if you want to drink cannabis, you have to consume this much of this much milligrams, and it's going to taste like, a Paloma, or it's going to taste like a
Mm,
lemon lime seltzer. So effectively, when you were looking at the drinks category, it was almost like sugary adult sodas with some weed in it.
yep.
And, you know, that would have been very simple for us to launch. The pathway was there, the category is there, the setup is there to do it. But we chose to do something very different and disruptive in that space, and we launched a product called Off Duty, which is in a snap formulation, like an easy snap formulation, where you just pinch it between two fingers, and you can put it into any drink. So it is a little snap format that's portable, it's discreet, and you can put it in any beverage, hot or cold. So again, it's
So is it
functional,
flavorless?
it's flavorless. And that is
No.
what is so exciting about this. Yes, because again, we don't want to tell people that you can only drink it in a lemon lime flavor and it needs to be bubbly and you need to advertise it in a can. Um, Nor do we want to tell people that in order to consume it, you have to tell everyone you're consuming it. We believe
That's
that
right.
cannabis, right? Like it should be as
Yeah,
discreet
you
as
feel like you're not opting out if you don't want to drink alcohol. Because my alcohol consumption has gone down drastically since I've been in the space. And I don't want to be the one who's like, oh, no, no, I'm not drinking, but I still want to be socially integrated.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll share the stories. I went to like a parents' holiday party,
Hmm.
and all the parents were drinking wine or beers or whatnot. And I actually don't drink alcohol. And and I wish I had had our 1906 product with us at the time. We hadn't launched it yet. And I was thinking I could bring a canned beverage with me. But I also didn't necessarily want to be I knew I would be the topic of conversation, either directly to me or behind my back,
Hmm.
whatever that would be, because I don't know if we have yet evolved culturally where there's the acceptance of cannabis consumption in very adult sort of settings. So it's fine if mom over here is getting lit on 3 glasses of Chardonnay, but my 2 milligram soda would have certainly been
A
uh,
topic.
a topic, right?
Mm,
And I mean, this probably says more about me than the culture that we're in. And I didn't necessarily want to invite that conversation in. But how cool would it have been for me just to have been able to drop it into like a seltzer with a lime
hmm.
in there. No one's going to have thought twice about it. And in fact, I dropped this product into a girlfriend of mine wanted to try it. And I said, let's put it in our ketchup and we can share fries over it. So,
Infused condiments. Love it.
infused condiments, exactly. But that just goes back to how we do innovation again, which is, very purpose led. Our innovation is not about novelty, it's about accessibility and about utility at the end of the day. So, coming out of that insight of what is the power of unflavored, we are seeing all through our customer feedback and customer testimonials, not only if they like the product or not, or how it's working for them, but they enjoy that it's unflavored, that it gives them the control, that it lets them feel social without advertising what they're consuming. So we're taking a lot of those insights now into our product development roadmap. So
It's so intelligent.
definitely look out for this space. We have something very big launching in September.
Woo! It's which is just around the corner. I mean, looking
Just
at
around the corner.
and also by the time we hear about it, I'm sure there's going to be an incredible amount of build up to that in terms of launch activity. Um, how cool it is that we're looking at cannabis across so many different form factors, and that you have the ability to really lead and drive a brand from an intentional, from a functional standpoint that is not a race to the bottom, you know, that we're often contending with as marketers within our brands. I'm so grateful that, you agreed to come on to the show. So, but before we wrap up, as you know, there's one question I always ask
Ah,
our guests is, if you had a superpower and you have this superhero persona, what would be your superhero alter ego?
so I did think about this one. And here I go. I think, and I'm putting on my consumer hat a little bit. I'm going to take off my marketer hat. So let's say, what would I be? I would probably be the microdoser. So
Mm,
I wouldn't have a cape. Um, I would not look like a superhero with amazing powers that could absolutely transform your world. I would not have any sort of like crazy party tricks, but I would probably have something like a jumpsuit with tiny
Mm,
little pockets all over it, with lots of tiny, perfectly microdose little miracles. And so
just like yours.
yeah, sort of, I'd probably wear like a 1906 jumpsuit, but
Mm.
it's sort of like my superpower would be giving you exactly what you need and just enough of it to help you get through anything. So stressful meeting, I open my little chill pocket, I give you a little microdose from
Oh, I
there,
love that.
etc. So
So
a very
it's almost like a you know, a non-seasonal advent calendar outfit.
that's exactly what it would be. And I would never let you sit on the couch and just eat a ton of questionable snacks. You would have to do things with your cannabis experience for sure.
Yeah, because it's not about fading, it's about integrating.
Absolutely. And tuning more into how you feel.
Mm, I love it. It's so visual. I love that picture.
I know. I kind of wish I had the cape now because that would look even cooler. But
No,
I
but
don't
the
think the
cute
superpower has a
jumpsuit
cape.
with all the little pockets. I'm like, here you go. Here you go.
That's because you're putting your fashion hat on, and now we're thinking about if we would actually really
I
wear
know. It's
it.
like, that would not be that difficult to make.
Not at all. Well, thank you. I love
Thank
that
you
question.
again. So I learned so much. Our audience is going to learn so much from this podcast. Just so excited. And we can't wait to see the new product launch in September, which is just around the corner. And thank you for being with us. And to the audience, stay tuned for another episode of Branding Like a Boss. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.